Chapter 1 of Claudia Rankine's book Citizen is more of a piece of art than a text. It addresses racism in its everyday form through stories that differ from common mainstream ideas of racism, such as police brutality and social injustices. But it's not the content that makes Citizen so unique, it's Rankine's style of presenting these stories to the reader that makes her book much more impactful. Not being a person of color, racism is not something that I am commonly exposed to. I will see in the news or hear some remark made by others around me, but I am typically never at the center of it. This can make it somewhat hard to comprehend and sympathize with those affected by it. Rankine, however, used a style of writing that put me into the shoes of a person of color, making me feel as though I am the one in the situation being described. Rather than using I, he, or she for the main person of her stories, her consistent use of you allows the reader to be in the mind and the setting of the person in the story. In doing so, the reader is not reading the story as a spectator anymore, but experiencing the events as the actual character. This simple strategy was a great way to use pathos and appeal to the reader's emotions. We can experience the impact of using you by interchanging it with I in a few sentences from this chapter. For example, on page 13, the paragraph begins with, "A woman you do not know wants to join you for lunch. You are visiting her campus. In the cafe, you both ordered a Caesar salad." In this version, it is easy to envision yourself in the situation because Rankine is speaking directly to you. Now when we exchange the yous with I, me, and we, it will read much differently. A woman I do not know wants to join me for lunch. I am visiting her campus. In the cafe, we both ordered the Caesar salad. This version reads just as any other personal story or narrative, which can in a sense build a wall restricting the reader's ability to understand the situation. When the reader assumes a first-person view, it completely changes how they interpret the piece of writing. They are better able to feel the emotion and see the setting of the story being told. When I read Citizen, this allowed me to have a better understanding of what she was saying and understand the typically unseen or subtle examples of racism that are still present today. I think that putting the reader in the first-person view was a great way for Rankine to express herself in her stories. The first-person view is something that we relate well with and typically enjoy the experience of. A commonly seen example of us preferring the first-person view is how GoPros have become one of the top-selling cameras in the world. It has the ability to give the audience the feeling and rush of actually being in the image rather than watching someone else perform it. This makes it much more fun and interesting to experience and gives a perspective that is hard to come by in any other traditional image. I believe this is similar to what Rankine was doing in her writing. In order to get her points fully across, she forced the reader to assume a first-person view, which allowed the readers to overcome the walls that can be put up when discussing racism and better see and feel the reality of it. I really like the style of writing Rankine used because it allowed me to relate to the stories in a way that I hadn't done before. It had me constantly thinking about race and the struggles people of color encounter on a frequent basis. She knew that not everyone was going to have had the experiences she mentions in the first chapter or even know that they still exist today, but she overcame this by writing about her own experiences and the experiences of her family and friends in a way that forced the reader into the situation. I think that this was a unique and brilliant way for her to make racism relevant to those who don't always experience it.